The woman on the other end of the line spoke slowly, like someone trying to keep calm while describing a crime in progress. "Hi, is this Marissa Quinn? I'm sorry to bother you. It's Justine Ferris. I live 2 cabins down at Pine Hollow Lake. I just saw a moving truck in front of your house. Big one. Looked like the new owners were settling in." I didn't answer. My breath stayed locked inside my ribs, frozen under the sterile white light of my hotel room in Denver. I stared at the floor as her words clawed their way into my brain, one by one leaving cold scratches behind. "New owners," Justine went on, oblivious to the thunder building in my skull. "They said they bought it from you. They were carrying in rugs, paintings, even a dog bed. I figured maybe you moved and just didn't say." I hadn't moved. I hadn't sold. And no one should have had keys to Eagle's Rest. Not even my family. My family is a phrase I've been trying to recalibrate for years. My name is Marissa Quinn. I'm 36 years old, a structural engineer by trade, trained to see fractures before they collapse foundations. I specialize in buildings, left broken after wildfires, earthquakes, and human error. I can look at a home and tell you where the fault line started, what weight was never meant to be carried. Too bad I couldn't see it in my own life. I built Eagle's Rest over 11 years, paid in full, remodeled with my own hands, right down to the cedar floors. It was mine. It was the only thing I had that no one else in the Quinn family had touched, tainted, or demanded. It was where I went to breathe, and someone had moved in. I didn't call Justine back. I didn't call my mother. I booked the first flight back to Vermont. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I played and replayed her words in my head until they became something else entirely, like a scream muffled underwater. When I pulled up to the house, the sun was bleeding down behind the pine trees, and the cottage glowed warm with life. Curtains swayed in the window. Lights shimmered inside. A red SUV sat parked neatly in the gravel driveway, where my old wheelbarrow once rested. It didn't feel like home anymore. I walked up the stone path, once laid down by hand, barefoot and alone. I remembered the blister on my heel from that day. The way I'd limped back to my car, satisfied in a way spreadsheets and project deadlines never delivered. A woman opened the door before I knocked. Late 20s, blonde ponytail, barefoot, with a golden retriever wagging behind her. "Can I help you?" I told her who I was. Her expression changed, slowly, carefully, like a window sliding shut. "You're Marissa Quinn? The owner?" I nodded. "We just bought this place," she said. "From you." Then she showed me the paperwork. My name, my signature. A notarized power of attorney. But I had never signed it. She let me in, nervously. Her husband came out. They were school teachers, they said. Bought the house from a listing through an agency called Eastridge Properties. Paid cash. The funds had been wired into a holding company tied to my name. I kept nodding, my face expressionless. Inside, my stomach had turned to black oil. The moment they stepped away, I excused myself to the guest bathroom. I locked the door, pulled up the Vermont Property Registrar's site, searched the title number. The property had transferred. Days ago. I sat down on the edge of the tub, phone still glowing in my hand, my heart lurching like a dying engine. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." That alone was enough to make my skin crawl. "You sold my house." A pause. Too long. Then, "Marissa, I know you're upset, but let's talk like adults. I never gave you power of attorney." Her voice sharpened. "It was in your desk. You had it notarized years ago and forgot." "No, I didn't. I don't forget legal documents." Her breath crackled through the line like static. "Look, it was sitting there. Haley needed the help, and you've always said the cottage was your escape, that it wasn't about money." "Haley." "Of course. Infertility treatments are expensive," my mother went on. And the window's closing. We didn't have time. She said it like it was a decision made at a family meeting, as if the vote had been unanimous. She's not even married. She wants to be a mother, Marissa. Can't you understand that? I understand theft, she sighed, the sigh of a woman who once told me emotion was useful when timed correctly. You always cling to things too hard. That place was just sitting there. It was a cabin, not a life. No. It was my life, the only thing I ever built that you didn't touch. Her voice turned cold. Marissa, I'm sorry if this feels personal, but we all make sacrifices for the people we love. Haley deserves a future. The line went quiet, and then I knew. There were no infertility treatments, no clinic, no deadline. This wasn't about a baby. This was about control. I ended the call. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked out of the bathroom, thanked the new owners for their hospitality, and got back into my car. When I was halfway, down the gravel road, I called Lana. We hadn't spoken in years, not since we both left D.C. Her voice came groggy, probably woken up. It's me. I need to know if someone can fake a signature with a notary and make it stick. Silence. Then, who screwed you over? My parents. Are you sitting? Down? I parked. Didn't answer. Do you remember that insurance clause I made you add to your deed? The signature lock writer for property over $500,000? Yeah, you said it was unnecessary. I lied. What? I saw the way. Your mother talked to you when she came to that awards banquet. I knew she'd take something from you the second she thought you'd look away. I sat in silence. So I added the clause, which means any sale of your property without in-person approval from you isn't just void. It's fraud. I closed. My eyes. Lana, they used a notary. Then we find the notary. They used Aunt Renee's name. Did Renee sign it? No. I doubt she even knows. Then we take this to court. My heart beat slow, controlled, my breath leveled. I felt something click into place, clean and sharp. Marissa, Lana said. I'm not going to scream, I whispered. I'm going to erase them. You sure? They think I'm the quiet one. You are. I stared into the trees outside the windshield. But that's only because I haven't spoken yet. And I meant every word. You're probably watching this on your TV right now, just letting it roll while you relax. But if my story has you feeling something, don't just sit there. Pick up your phone, search LP, Family Drama on YouTube, and hit subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest way to say I understand is simply wanting to hear more stories like mine. Stories that don't always get told, but always deserve to be heard. I didn't answer any calls on the drive back from Pine Hollow Lake. Not my mother's, not Haley's. I let them pile up in my voicemail like dead leaves, cluttered, breathless, shrill. Each one some variation of "you don't understand" or "please just call me back." They were all noise, and I needed silence to think. When I got home, the first thing I did was open the locked drawer in my filing cabinet and pull out my original property deed. The real one. I ran my finger over the embossed seal, the ink slightly faded with age. It was still there, still mine. But it wasn't enough. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank wall in front of me. Eagle's Rest wasn't just a house. It was the only place I'd ever felt untouched by them. The only space where I didn't have to shrink to make room for Haley's chaos, or my mother's need to control every version of reality that didn't flatter her. I'd built it with the quiet precision I brought to every project. 12. Years of clawing back hours from an overburdened life, of weekends spent pouring concrete, sanding floorboards, waiting for the stain to set. It was sacred. And they'd walked in, signed a few faked pages, and sold it like it was just an extra piece on the family chessboard. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took out my laptop and opened an old email thread I hadn't touched in nearly 5 years. The subject line was still there. Contingency, if they ever cross the line. Lana Patel had sent it to me after a family dinner in 2018, the one where my father asked if I could co-sign on Haley's third business loan, and Judith smiled across the table like I should be honored. I typed, "It's time." She called, me within minutes. "Tell me everything," she said. Her voice was steady, the kind of calm that doesn't wait for approval. I did. I told her about the fake sale, the forged signature, the mysterious holding company, the couple who now lived in my house with no clue they were part of a con. I told her about the phone call from Judith, who'd spoken of stealing my property like she was discussing a weekend chore. "You were right," I said when I finished. She didn't say "I told you so." Instead, "Did they use a notary?" "Yes." "Aunt Renee," Lana paused. "Your aunt who moved to Oregon?" "Yes, the one who hasn't spoken to my mother since the will fight." Another pause. "That's federal fraud. If the notary stamp was expired, if the registry wasn't updated, they didn't just forge your name, they committed a felony." I could feel my pulse settle. "I want it back," I said. "You will." That night, I didn't sleep. I researched the holding company. It was registered under the name Quinn Bridge Ventures LLC, created 3 weeks ago. A Vermont-based LLC with 2 listed members, Clark Quinn and a secondary manager named H. Vale. Haley. Of course she'd changed her name. It sounded more expensive that way. The house wasn't sold to help her become a mother. It was sold to help her become a mogul. The next morning, I met Lana in her downtown office. She looked exactly the same. Black suit, glassy eyes, movements like clockwork. We sat across a slab of concrete disguised as a desk. "I've already filed a temporary injunction," she said. "Nothing else can happen to the property for the next 14 days. That gives us time to prepare our claim. You're going to need to testify." "I want to." "We'll need more than your word, but don't worry. There's a paper trail. Greedy people always leave one." She showed me what she'd already uncovered, the wire transfer from the buyers to Quinn Bridge Ventures, flagged due to irregularities. The LLC formation papers filed on a public holiday, a lazy mistake. The sale paperwork using an outdated notary ID from a woman who hadn't lived in the state for 2 years. But what caught my attention most was something else. A line item from Haley's personal bank account. A withdrawal of $30,000, dated the day before the supposed closing. The memo said, "Investor guarantee." "She didn't use the money for IVF?" I said aloud. "No," Lana said, clicking her pen. "She used it to buy into a cryptocurrency startup. One that doesn't have a working website or any legal registration. A vapor company." "She lied to them too," I murmured. Lana tilted her head. "You think she lied to Judith?" I opened. My mouth then closed it, and there it was. The fracture I hadn't seen. I had always assumed Judith was the puppet master, pulling strings, turning Clark and Haley into extensions of her will. But what if she wasn't? What if Haley had learned from the best and simply become better at the game? Later that afternoon, I drove to Judith and Clark's house. I didn't go inside. I parked across the street and watched. I knew their routines, knew the way Judith hovered by the window after 5 p.m., always pretending not to look, always needing to see. She saw me. Her silhouette flickered behind the curtains, paused, then moved away. 2 hours later, Haley called. "I know you're mad," she said, all lightness. "But you need to understand, we didn't have a choice." "Don't use we," I said. There was a pause. "I'm your sister." "No, you're a liability." A beat. Then she laughed, and it was wrong. Thin, desperate. "You think you're above all this? You think sitting in your perfect little cottage makes you better than us?" "You didn't even want the house," I said. "You wanted what it represented. Leverage." More silence. Then she said, quieter, "You should be careful who you trust." Click. I stared at the wall for a long time after that. You should be careful who you trust. Not a threat. Not quite. But a warning. I called Lana. You were right. It's deeper than just theft. I know. I think Haley used them too. She may have. But they still signed. They still forged. That makes them guilty. A long breath passed. Between us. And what about the couple? I asked. The ones who bought the house? We're going to bring them in. If we get them on our side, the case goes nuclear. What if they don't believe me? They will. How? Lana smiled for the first time. Because unlike your parents, they still believe in contracts. I hung up and walked to my closet, pulled down a small fireproof safe. Inside was every receipt, every invoice, every picture from the renovation. Me in a dust mask, laying insulation. Me on a ladder, painting the shutters. Eagle's Rest wasn't just a structure. It was evidence, and soon, it would be ammunition. Before bed, I checked the court docket. Our hearing was scheduled in 14 days. But I knew this war would stretch far beyond that. Still, I slept that night. Lightly, but without dread. Because when someone takes what you built thinking you'll fold, the most powerful answer is not anger, it's accuracy. It's calculation. It's the moment they realize you were never asleep. You were just documenting the crime. The call connected on the third ring, and when I heard her voice, it felt like opening a sealed room and stepping into air that hadn't moved in years. Marissa? Aunt Renee, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer carefully. Did you notarize anything for Mom recently? The silence on the other end told me everything. Then her voice came low and bitter. No. And I haven't spoken to Judith since your grandmother's estate. You know that. I sat still in the armchair, one leg crossed over the other, as if posture could keep my blood from boiling. She used your notary stamp on a power of attorney document. Claims I signed. She sold Eagle's Rest. There was a sharp intake of breath. What? They forged my signature. The house is gone. Sold. Transferred to a shell company. Money's already moved. That stamp was in my old office, Renee said. She asked for my records years. Ago said she needed a copy for some family tax thing. I told her no. I thought she dropped it. She didn't. She waited. Renee swore under her breath. It was in a locked file cabinet in the garage. She must have taken it during the funeral. That was 5 years ago. 5 years to hold a key piece like a pawn. 5 years to wait for the right moment to cash. It in a fake notary. A stolen signature. A sale built on rot, masquerading as family sacrifice. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel angry. Anger implies a need to be heard. What I felt was the total absence of surprise. The kind of cold that only exists once you've accepted that your own mother could treat you like a contingency plan. I emailed Lana everything. Renee's denial, the timeline, the stolen notary seal. Her reply came back fast. That's the keystone. We move. By noon, Lana had prepared a preliminary fraud complaint and submitted it to the Vermont State Bar along with a formal affidavit from Renee. But that wasn't the part that kept me awake. It was the realization that they didn't forge the notary to convince the world. They did it because they were betting I'd never question it. That night, I drove past my parents' house. Not to confront them. I just wanted to see it one last time through the lens I used to wear, when I still thought loyalty was love. The porch light was on. Clark's old Buick sat in the driveway, and there were fresh groceries by the door. Judith was still playing. House. Still living like there was no storm gathering outside her glass walls. I parked down the block and watched. A figure moved inside, hers, judging by the rigid posture. Then another. Haley. I hadn't realized she was back. She wasn't. Supposed to be in Vermont. She was living in New York last I'd heard, peddling conscious ceramics, and chasing gallery space. Why was she here now? The next morning, I found out. The buyers from Eagle's Rest called. They sounded nervous. The woman, Justine, said they'd been visited by Haley in person. She had smiled, reassured them, told them the confusion around the sale was being resolved and they'd be receiving an official apology soon. That they should ignore any calls from lawyers for now. She said you were having a breakdown, Justine whispered. That you were unstable. It was so clean, so rehearsed. The same script Judith had used when I backed out of co-signing Haley's second car loan. When I told them I couldn't pay off Clark's gambling debt. When I moved out of state and stopped showing up for holidays. She never raised her voice. She just changed the narrative, and people believed her. But this time was different. This time, I had documentation. Lana and I brought Justine and her husband into a secure Zoom call that afternoon. We showed them the timeline, the signature inconsistencies, Renee's affidavit, the illegal notary seal, the fact that their purchase was built on false pretenses and could be reversed at any moment. At first, they were defensive. We paid everything in full. We checked the documents. You checked what you were given, Lana said calmly, and what you were given was fake. I stayed silent through most of it until Justine looked at me, eyes wide, voice trembling. You're not making this up, are you? I shook my head. I built that house with my own hands. I never intended to sell it. And if this isn't resolved, it's not just me they'll come after. It'll be you. Because you're holding stolen property, even if you didn't know. A long silence. Then Justine's husband leaned forward. What do you need us to do? After the call. I finally opened the group text Judith had sent earlier that morning. I hadn't read her messages in days. This one was different. It was a photo. Me, age 16, standing with Haley at the lake. Both of us sunburned, grinning, holding popsicles. The caption said, "We're still a family no matter how angry we get." But the metadata told a different story. The image had been forwarded from Haley's phone, not Judith's, and the file name wasn't a default camera string. It had been renamed Leverage JPG. I stared at it for a long time, not because it hurt, but because I finally saw them clearly. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a vault, a controlled asset with an emotional pin. The photo was meant to soften me, pull me back, to remind me of a version of us that never really existed outside their stories. I archived the message without replying. I took a screenshot. I uploaded it to the case file. Then I deleted the thread. Not because it hurt, because it no longer worked. In the evening, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman's voice, measured, professional. My name is Heather Monroe. I work in compliance for East Ridge Properties. I was informed by an outside party that a sale we processed may involve a forged power of attorney. I'd like to speak with you in detail. I met her in person the next morning. Lana came too. Heather brought her laptop, and what she showed us confirmed everything. The signatures on the sales forms had been scanned, not signed. The metadata was off by 2 full years. The notary stamp didn't match the registry number it was supposed to be attached to. And here was the moment I leaned forward. There was a flagged email in their internal system from Haley Quinn, sent 6 weeks before the sale. It read, "Can we expedite the listing and keep the paperwork under the LLC umbrella? She won't. Notice, she's in Denver all month." That wasn't ignorance, that was intent. Heather looked shaken. "We'll cooperate fully," she said. "And the agency will be prepared to issue a public retraction if this goes to court." Lana smiled without moving her lips. "It will." When I got home, I poured myself a cup of black tea, walked to the window, and stared at the half-dead ficus plant I kept forgetting to water. It looked like it was trying to decide whether to hang on or just let go. I poured the tea into its soil. Then I picked up my phone and opened a new note. Title, Terms of Restoration. Item 1. Full ownership of Eagle's Rest reestablished. Item 2. Fraud complaint filed. Item 3. Civil suit prepared. Item 4. No more second chances. I saved it and shut off my phone. There would be no confrontation, no door slamming, no one yelling in a kitchen about everything we've done for you. This was going to be clinical, documented, slow, like dismantling a bridge you designed yourself, and watching the river reclaim what was always supposed to be free. The first document Lana handed me that morning was thin, just 2 pages, a temporary restraining order halting any further financial movement from the shell company that had received the funds for Eagle's Rest. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even complicated. But it was the first crack in the shell they'd built around me. It's like driving a wedge into a rotted beam, Lana said. Looks solid, but you press in the right spot, and everything collapses. We were in her downtown office, gray walls and darker furniture, stripped of personal details. No diplomas, no framed photos, just clean angles and legal precision. I admired it. I envied it. I want them to feel it, I said. Not just lose money. I want the narrative to turn. She raised an eyebrow. You want a reputation collapse. I want them to explain themselves, in court, under oath, with no script and no rescue. She leaned back. Then it starts now. What we did next wasn't flashy. We didn't storm in. We planted anchors. Lana sent certified letters to Judith and Clark, informing them of pending litigation and barring them from contacting me directly. That same day, she filed a motion with the state court to formally freeze the transaction until full verification of ownership could be conducted. It would buy us time, but only if the next step worked, isolating the buyers from their manipulation. Called Justine, the woman now living in Eagle's Rest. I asked her to meet in person. She was hesitant, but agreed. We met at a small bakery near the lake. She came with her husband, cautious but curious, like people waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't blame them. I don't blame you, I said before they even sat down. But I need you to understand that what happened wasn't just a mistake. It was manufactured. Her husband placed a hand on her arm. Protective. Quiet. We bought in good faith, she said. I know, but they forged a document. The notary was expired. The signature isn't mine. And if the sale is reversed, you lose the house. And your recourse depends on who you go after. They looked at each other. I let the silence sit. Then I handed her something, a printout of an email. Haley's message to the real estate agency. She won't notice. She's in Denver all month. Justine's fingers curled around the edge of the page. Her knuckles went white. She said you were unstable, she said. She told us you had a breakdown after a work accident and didn't remember signing the paperwork. I didn't respond. I just looked at her. That was a lie, wasn't it? I nodded. And then her husband spoke, voice low and firm. What do you need from us? Lana had predicted that. Decent people don't like being used, but they hate being embarrassed more. We drafted a joint statement that day, an affidavit from the buyers, confirming they were never shown original documentation and had received verbal reassurances from Haley Quinn that turned out to be false. It would be entered into the court, file and publicly accessible. One signature from them could unravel the entire transaction in front of a judge. But something still gnawed at me. Why would Haley be so careless? Why come back to Vermont? Why expose herself to discovery? The answer came in the form of a voicemail that evening. I recognized the number. A burner. Marissa. It's me. Her voice was calm. Too calm. I know what you're doing. I know Lana's involved. I just want you to stop and think. Do you really want all this public? Do you really want people digging through family business? Because I promise, it goes both ways. She waited. A beat. And if you think Mom and Dad did this for me, you might want to ask yourself why the deed transfer was already drafted before I ever saw a dime. Click. The message was 43 seconds long, but it rearranged everything I thought I understood, because buried inside that casual threat was a revelation. Haley hadn't initiated the sale. She had capitalized on it. I pulled up the filing logs Lana had dug up earlier. Quinn Bridge Ventures had been formed 4 days before the forged notary was submitted. The buyer's wire transfer landed 3 days later. The transfer of ownership to the LLC filed 10 minutes after the wire hit. The entire sequence had been queued up like a transaction waiting for a password. Haley didn't forge the documents. Judith did. And not out of maternal desperation, but out of strategy. The next morning, I changed my legal focus. We didn't go after Haley. We went after Judith. Lana filed a separate motion naming Judith Quinn as the principal actor in the fraudulent conveyance. She would no longer be shielded by implication. We exposed the timeline, matched the IP address used to submit the digital documents to Judith's home network. Then, Lana did something I hadn't expected. She subpoenaed the email metadata from the notary service platform, and there, buried in the login logs, was a recovery email. jquinn.family@gmail.com, a throwaway account, used only once, created 5 days. Before the transaction, it was deliberate, planned, filed, then executed. Everything Haley had said was true, but not for the reasons she'd wanted me to think. The real betrayal hadn't come from my reckless sister. It had come from my mother. That afternoon, I sat in my car, parked just outside the county recorder's office. I watched Judith step out of her Lexus, clipboard in hand, heels clicking against the pavement, still playing matriarch. Still acting as if her version of reality could be filed into place like a new will. But this time, I wasn't outside the glass. I was inside the game, and I wasn't moving my queen yet. I was lining up the pawns. The email was buried deep in my archives, but when I found it, it read like a whisper from a past self who had glimpsed the storm before it broke. It was a policy document I had scanned into cloud storage 6 years ago. A quiet, bureaucratic act meant to ease my anxiety at the time. Lana had insisted on it. Just in case they ever try to get clever, she'd said. It was a rider, buried, in a supplemental clause to my homeowner's insurance agreement. For properties valued above $500,000, no sale could be processed without an in-person verification and biometric signature match from the legal owner. A clause designed not to stop strangers, but to slow down people who knew exactly how I signed my name, how I trusted too easily, how I rarely read the fine print when it came from those I loved. I forwarded the document to Lana with one line. They didn't check this. Her reply came within 2 minutes. This voids the entire transaction. I stared at her message, letting the words settle like concrete. Void all of their signatures, their forged seals, their fake declarations, the notary, the LLC, the cash that had changed hands. Every part of it depended on the illusion that I had relinquished ownership willingly, and the clause snapped that illusion in two. What they'd sold was never theirs to touch. I printed the document and drove it straight to Lana's office. When I stepped inside, she looked up from her desk with a tight, knowing smile. "This is the structural load-bearing beam they forgot about," she said. "Without this, their entire defense caves." We filed the paperwork that afternoon, attaching it to the fraud claim. It gave us grounds to pursue not just civil restitution, but criminal penalties, real charges, real consequences. For once, they wouldn't be able to reduce everything to a misunderstanding between family. The next morning, a courier delivered a package to my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a bundle of old photographs. Me and Haley as children, sitting on the edge of the lake. Our father holding a kite. Judith in the background smiling. I flipped each photo over. On the back of one, a note, handwritten. We built this family together, don't destroy it. It wasn't signed, but I recognized the penmanship. Judith had always written like she was filling out invitations. I set the photos aside without a word. Later that day, Lana contacted the buyer's lawyer and arranged a formal joint motion. With the protective clause in place and their affidavit of good faith submitted, the court would likely freeze the title permanently until the fraudulent conveyance was fully resolved. Their investment wouldn't be lost, but their patience would be tested, which was exactly the point. Judith, I knew, couldn't tolerate waiting, couldn't stand sitting still while the story ran without her as narrator. And true to form, she broke the silence that evening. A message came through my encrypted legal inbox. It was short. "Come to the house. Just you. Let's talk like women." I didn't reply. But I went. Not because she asked, because I needed to see how far she'd fall to keep pretending she was still in control. I didn't knock. The door was already open. Judith was waiting in the living room, poised as always. Her hair neat, her dress expensive but understated. Clark sat to the side, silent, eyes heavy. Haley wasn't there. "Tea?" Judith offered. "No," she studied. "Me," her smile brittle. "You've made quite the mess." I didn't speak. "I told your sister not to push so hard," she said, voice low. "But she's young. She thought it was just money." "It wasn't her," I said quietly. Her expression didn't change. "She was a pawn," I added. "This was you." She reached for the teacup she'd poured for herself. Calm. "I did what needed to be done." "No," I said. "You did what you thought you could get away with." Semantics. You forged federal documents, you stole property, you used a notary stamp that didn't belong to you. I protected your sister. You used her as a smokescreen. She sipped the tea, then placed it down gently. You always needed to be the victim, even now. Clark shifted beside her, and for the first time in years, I looked directly at him. You watched her do this. You helped. He didn't meet my eyes. "Do you even understand what happens next?" I asked them both. "Because I don't think you do." Judith smiled again, tighter this time. "You think this is power. Marissa? Lawsuits and courtrooms and affidavits? That's not real power. Real power is what you do when the lights are off. When people believe your version of the story before they even ask questions." She leaned forward. "And you don't know how to shape a story. You only know how to build things and cry when they're broken." It landed like a slap, not because it hurt, but because it was so precisely what I used to fear might be true. But I wasn't 16 anymore, and I wasn't here for her approval. I stood up. "Enjoy the tea," I said. She tilted her head. "You won't win." "I already have." I turned and walked out. That night, I filed the final motion Lana had prepared, a demand for full title reversion under breach of title protections and fraudulent conveyance. We sent copies to the county court, the buyers, the escrow agency, and East Ridge Properties. Then we activated the last piece. Weeks ago, during my renovation of Eagle's Rest, I had set up a private insurance-backed smart system for the home. Biometric locks, cloud-verified access logs, interior surveillance. It was mostly for protection when I traveled. What I hadn't realized until now was that it had recorded something else. The day the forged power of attorney was used to file the transfer, Judith had entered my home. Her face was caught on the internal camera. Her voice, too. "Don't touch that cabinet," she'd snapped at Clark. "Just get the damn forms and go." I uploaded the footage. This wasn't just a paper trail anymore. It was a confession. I watched the video once. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. I didn't sleep well, not because I was afraid, but because I knew that in the morning, the bridge would collapse. And for once, I wouldn't be the one underneath it. The hearing was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. sharp, but I arrived by 8:05. I wasn't there to prepare. Lana had handled that. I was there to watch them walk in. Judith arrived first, wearing a navy blazer and pearls that looked like they belonged to a courtroom drama she'd rehearsed in her head. She held herself like she still believed the narrative could be salvaged. That appearance might outlast evidence. Clark trailed behind her, small in every way, adjusting his collar, avoiding eye contact with the bailiff like a child in trouble. Haley wasn't with them. At 8:43, I received a text from Lana. They tried to file a motion to delay. Judge denied. We're on. By the time the courtroom doors opened, I had already arranged the exhibits in my mind. The forged power of attorney, the footage of Judith and Clark rifling through my documents, Aunt Renee's affidavit, the insurance clause, the buyer's statement, and the biometric access logs that showed I hadn't stepped foot in Eagle's Rest during the time frame they claimed I had been present to approve the sale. I wasn't nervous. I had moved beyond nerves. This was structure now. Load-bearing. Truth. And I knew how to hold a line. When the judge entered, Lana stood with me. Her voice was clear. Her pacing, surgical. Your Honor, we are not merely dealing with a family dispute, she said. This is an orchestrated scheme involving falsified legal documents, unauthorized access to protected property, and fraudulent financial gain. The plaintiff seeks immediate nullification of the sale and criminal referral to the appropriate agencies, Judith interrupted. With respect, Your Honor. Lana didn't flinch. Ms. Quinn will have a chance to respond under oath. The judge raised a brow and gestured for Lana to continue. The courtroom was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual coughs and paper shuffles felt dampened by the weight of the tension. Then came the first detail Judith didn't expect. Lana displayed the insurance clause, the one requiring in-person biometric confirmation for any sale over $500,000. The clause they'd missed. The clause that made the entire transaction legally inert. Judith leaned forward, reading it like she could will the words into saying something else. Then she smiled. Not confusion, but calculation. That clause wasn't active, she said. It was part of an older policy. You assumed, Lana cut in, that you could outpace accountability. But the clause was renewed with each annual update. The logs show it's been enforced every year. That assumption is not a defense. It's an admission. Then the second blow landed. The buyers had submitted a sworn affidavit stating they had been reassured repeatedly by Haley Quinn that I was fully aware of the sale, despite never having spoken to me. That I had personally instructed them to wire money to Quinn Bridge Ventures, a shell account. Lana laid out the structure of that LLC, the ownership trail that led directly to Judith's name. Haley was just a secondary member. Clark's signature appeared on the withdrawal forms. Money that had already begun funding a tech startup with no assets, no product, and no legal standing. And that's when Clark broke. In the silence that followed Lana's statement, Clark's hands began to tremble. His mouth opened, closed. Your Honor, he said suddenly, voice small. She made it seem like it was already done. I thought it was just a cleanup. I didn't know it was illegal. Judith turned to him, sharp. Don't speak, not now. But it was too late. The room had heard him. The judge motioned for a break. Lana leaned toward me. She's going to try to isolate him now, say it was all him, shift liability. She always needs a scapegoat, I said. Even when she builds the fire herself. 10 minutes later, we resumed. Judith's lawyer tried to reframe everything as an internal family matter. That it was about miscommunication. That the notary seal had been borrowed unintentionally. That I had expressed interest in selling the house previously. Lana didn't even stand up to respond. She let the evidence speak. The video, the forged timestamp, the server logs, the recovery email linked to Judith's burner account, then the Judge asked if the defendants had any closing comments. Judith stood. I did what any mother would do, she said. Marissa has always kept herself separate, distant. This house, this obsession, it was her way of proving she didn't need us. And maybe we made a mistake, but it was for the family, for Haley's future. She wasn't supposed to find out, was she? The judge asked, eyes sharp. That's why you bypassed every notification channel, why you used a non-verified notary, why you created an LLC. Judith blinked, because the moment she knew, he continued, the lie collapsed. And that was the moment it happened, the one twist no one expected. Haley entered the courtroom. She didn't walk like someone called to testify. She walked like someone called to settle a debt. The judge looked up. Are you Haley Quinn? I am, she said. You're not listed as a witness. I asked to speak. Judith stood, eyes wide. Haley, sit down. But Haley didn't. She looked at the judge, then at me. She's telling the truth, Haley said. All of it. I didn't want the house. I wanted the money. But I didn't. Come up with this. Mom did. She planned it for months. I just went along because that's what I do. Judith's mouth opened. You selfish little... Don't, Haley said. And for once, there was steel in her voice. You lied to. Me too, she added quieter. You said she'd agreed. You said the notary was clean. You said it was just a formality. I sat still. Watching the game board flip mid-play, Haley turned back to the judge. I'll sign whatever you want. I just want out. The judge looked at Judith, then at Clark, and finally at me. You'll get your house back, he said. But this is far from over. I nodded once. Just once, because I hadn't come for drama. I had come for judgment. And now it had begun. The courthouse hallway was colder than I remembered. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the linoleum floor. I sat alone on the bench, my back straight, hands clasped in my lap, eyes fixed on the door to courtroom 3B. Inside, the final arguments were being made. Lana had insisted I stay out here to maintain the image of the wronged daughter, the betrayed sister. She said it would play better with the jury. I complied, as I had with every calculated move in this legal chess game. 11 years of my life had been poured into Eagle's Rest. Every beam, every nail, every brushstroke of paint was a testament to my resilience, my escape from the suffocating grip of my family. And yet, they had tried to strip it away with forged signatures and lies. They claimed it was for Haley, for her future, for her unborn child. But the truth was far more insidious, a desperate gamble on a failing cryptocurrency venture, a last-ditch effort to salvage their own crumbling facade. I had uncovered the layers of deceit with Lana's help. The notarized documents, supposedly signed by me, bore the unmistakable imprint of Aunt Renee's old seal. A seal she hadn't used in years, one she claimed had been lost. When confronted, she confessed that Judith had convinced her it was a harmless favor, a way to help Haley in her time of need. Renee had no idea the extent of the fraud she was enabling. The young couple who had unknowingly purchased my home had been devastated when they learned the truth. They had invested their savings, their dreams, into Eagle's Rest. I met them, explained the situation, and saw the pain in their eyes. But they understood. They joined our lawsuit, their testimony adding weight to our case. As I sat on that bench, memories flooded back. Haley's laughter echoing through the halls of our childhood home, Judith's stern voice dictating our every move, Clark's silent acquiescence to his wife's schemes. I had always been the responsible one, the fixer, the one who held everything together. And they had exploited that, time and again. The door to the courtroom opened, and Lana stepped out, her expression unreadable. She approached me, her heels clicking against the floor. It's done, she said softly. the jury saw, through their lies. The house is yours again. I nodded, the weight of the moment settling over me. Relief was a distant emotion, one I couldn't afford just yet. They're going to appeal, Lana continued. Judith won't go down without a fight. I know, I replied. But this time, I'm ready. Back at my apartment, I sat. At my desk, the legal documents spread out before me. I reviewed every line, every clause, ensuring there were no loopholes they could exploit. I had learned the hard way that trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. A notification pinged on my laptop, an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You don't know the whole story." I hesitated, then opened it. Attached was a video file. I clicked play. The footage was grainy, taken from a hidden camera. It showed Judith and Haley in a heated argument. "You promised me this would work," Haley hissed. "You said Marissa would never find out." "She wasn't supposed to," Judith snapped. "But you got greedy. You pushed too hard. I did this for you, for the family." "No," Judith said coldly. "You did it for yourself." The video ended. I sat back, processing what I had just seen. The cracks in their alliance were deeper than I had realized. They had turned on each other, their unity unraveling under the weight of their own deceit. I forwarded the video to Lana. She would know how to use it to our advantage. The fee. Next morning, I returned to Eagle's Rest. The house stood as I had left it, untouched by the chaos that had surrounded it. I walked through the rooms, running my fingers along the walls, the furniture, the memories. In the living room, I found a letter on the coffee table. It was addressed to me, in Haley's handwriting. I opened it. "Marissa, I never meant for it to go this far. I was desperate and Mom said it was the only way. I thought we could fix it before you found out. I'm sorry. Haley." I folded the letter and placed it back on the table. Sorry was a start, but it wasn't enough. I stepped outside, the crisp air filling my lungs. The lake shimmered in the bee. Morning light, a symbol of the peace I had fought so hard to reclaim. My phone rang. It was Lana. "Marissa, we have a problem," she said. "Judith's filed a countersuit. She's claiming you coerced Aunt Renee into testifying." I closed my eyes, the familiar tension settling in my shoulders. "Let her try," I said. "We have the truth on our side." As I hung up, I knew the battle was far from over, but I was no longer the passive daughter, the silent victim. I was Marissa Quinn, and I would not be broken. The courtroom was silent as the judge called for a recess. I stood, my hands clenched at my sides, feeling the weight of the moment. The evidence Lana and I had presented was damning, yet the faces of my family remained composed, almost smug. It was as if they believed they could still manipulate the outcome, twist the narrative in their favor. Outside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Reporters hovered, eager for a statement. But I offered none. Instead, I walked away, needing space to process the revelations and prepare for the next phase. Back at Lana's office, we reviewed the day's proceedings. The forged documents, the misuse of Aunt Renee's notary seal, the financial records pointing to the cryptocurrency startup, all laid bare. Yet something gnawed at me, a sense that there was more beneath the surface. "Marissa," Lana said, breaking the silence, "there's a pattern here. Every time we think we've uncovered the extent of their deceit, another layer emerges." I nodded, the realization settling in. My family had built a web of lies so intricate that even now, pieces remained hidden. Determined to uncover the full truth, I delved deeper into the financial records. Late into the night, I pored over transactions, cross-referencing dates and amounts. Then, a discrepancy caught my eye. A series of withdrawals made in Haley's name, but the signatures didn't match. I brought the documents to Lana the next morning. She examined them, her brow furrowing. These signatures are inconsistent. We need to verify their authenticity. We enlisted a forensic document examiner who confirmed our suspicions. The signatures were forged. But who had done it? And why? As we investigated further, a name surfaced: Daniel Harper, a former associate of my father's. He had a history of financial misconduct and had been involved in the cryptocurrency venture. It became clear that he had collaborated with my family, orchestrating the fraudulent transactions to siphon funds for their failing startup. Armed with this new information, we prepared to confront them in court. The next session was intense. Lana presented the findings, detailing the extent of the conspiracy. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the judge reviewed the evidence. Judith's composure cracked for the first time. Her eyes darted nervously, and she whispered to Clark, who looked pale and defeated. Haley, however, remained defiant, her gaze fixed on me with a mixture of resentment and fear. The judge called for a recess, and I stepped outside, needing air. As I stood alone, Aunt Renee approached. She looked weary, burdened by the role she had unwittingly played in their scheme. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never imagined they'd use my seal for this." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "Thank you for coming forward. Your testimony will help set things right." Back in the courtroom, Aunt Renee took the stand, recounting how Judith had accessed her notary seal without permission. Her words were measured, but the impact was profound. The judge listened intently, his expression grave. As the session concluded, the judge announced that a verdict would be delivered the following day. The tension in the room was palpable as we dispersed. That evening, I returned to Eagle's Rest. The house stood as a testament to my resilience, a symbol of the freedom I had fought to reclaim. I walked through the rooms, memories flooding back, both joyful and painful. In the study, I found the original blueprints I had drawn years ago. They represented not just a structure, but a dream. A life built on integrity and independence. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, he began, "It is clear that a deliberate and extensive fraud was perpetrated against Ms. Quinn. The court hereby restores full ownership of the property, known as Eagle's Rest, to Marissa Quinn." A wave of relief washed over me, but I remained composed. The judge continued, outlining the legal consequences for my family's actions, including restitution and potential criminal charges. As the session ended, I stood, facing my family one last time. Judith avoided my gaze, Clark looked ashamed, and Haley's expression was unreadable. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the remnants of a broken family and stepping into a future I had reclaimed through truth and perseverance. I returned to Eagle's Rest the morning after the verdict. There were no cameras now, no attorneys, no reporters, just silence. Silence, and the soft rustle of leaves that moved like whispers, echoes of the years, the betrayals, the rebuilding. The house stood still, yet changed. Not physically, its bones were the same, but spiritually, it had shed something. It was no longer the house my family had tried to gut and sell off. It was mine again, but more than that, it was a place reborn. I walked the path around the lake where I used to sketch out plans on the back of napkins, where I'd spent winters insulating pipes with my own hands, and summers repairing the shoreline erosion alone. I remembered the sweat, the isolation, the small wins only I ever witnessed. I remembered thinking it would be the first place anyone truly saw me. Instead, it became the place where they tried to erase me, until I made it the place I erased them. There was a letter in the mailbox, hand-delivered. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. My mother's. I opened it slowly, even knowing it would offer nothing of real remorse. "You made your choice. You made your distance. I hope it gives you peace. We only did what we thought was best for the family. No apology, just deflection wrapped in the language of sacrifice. Her final attempt to paint me as cold for not forgiving what she framed as love. But I wasn't seeking her remorse anymore. That ship had long since gone under, and the truth is, I never wanted vengeance. I wanted acknowledgement, a line drawn, an end to pretending. What they tried to steal wasn't just a deed. It was the only thing I had ever built that was fully mine. It wasn't about bricks or lake views. It was the only place I hadn't had to shrink myself to fit their needs. In reclaiming it, I didn't just win back a house. I reclaimed my name, my choices, my voice. Haley tried to reach out. Not directly, through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted to talk, said she had been pressured, that she hadn't known the full plan. She even hinted at being willing to testify against our mother if the criminal charges went further. But I didn't respond, because I didn't need her confession. I didn't need her guilt. The truth had already done its job. The public records bore the scars now. The myth of the perfect Quinn family was over. The biggest surprise came a week later. I received a small envelope from Lana. Inside was a newspaper clipping, an op-ed written by the couple who'd unknowingly purchased my stolen house. They wrote about justice, about property rights, about trust. They didn't name me, but their words praised a woman who refused to be erased. The last line simply read, "She fought not just for land, but for legacy, and she won." I placed that clipping in a frame on the mantel where family portraits used to sit. Weeks passed, seasons turned. The house grew quiet again, but this time, it was the kind of quiet I chose. And one evening, as I sat on the back porch, watching the golden light ripple across the lake, I began to write this, because I knew the story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to anyone who has ever been silenced by the people they trusted most. It belonged to anyone who learned the hardest way that sometimes blood doesn't mean bond. It belonged to anyone who had to claw their name back from the hands of those who used love as a weapon. And so, to you, whoever you are, wherever you are, I want to leave you with this. They may raise you to be obedient. They may call it duty when they ask you to bend. They may use love as a leash and shame as a ceiling. But you are not here to serve someone else's version of who you should be. You are not selfish for drawing a boundary. You are not cruel for demanding your name be your own. You are not wrong for walking away from the ones who should have protected you and choosing to protect yourself instead. Because survival is not betrayal. And peace is not surrender. And when you rebuild on your own terms, in your own time, they will say you became cold, distant, unrecognizable. Let them. You were never built to stay small. You were built to rise. So rise, even if you do it alone, especially then. If this story resonated with you, if you felt seen or empowered even just for a moment, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing more powerful stories like this to light. Thank you for watching, and remember, just because they made you quiet doesn't mean they made you weak.